It's been almost 45 years since the death of Martin Luther King Jr. He had given his entire being to peace and equality. He had given his mind, his soul, and eventually his life to the cause. Most people say that George Washington is the father of our country, but Martin Luther King Jr. is the father of a revolution that dug up the very racist foundation of this nation in hopes of building a better future. Martin Luther King Jr. received his doctorate degree in systematic theology in 1955. That very year, historic turns of events will mold his life's path, and his life will shape the civil rights movement that will, in turn, alter history. That year, he was only 26 years old. There were two women in his life. His wife, Coretta Scott King, was always by his side, a constant source of support. They married in 1953 when he was 24 and remained so until the day he died. The other woman was Rosa Parks, who he never knew before 1955, but through her courageous actions pushed him onto the pedestal of leadership. A key event that launched the civil rights movement in America was the Montgomery bus boycott. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks, a 42-year-old seamstress, was sitting on a bus not too different from this. When she was asked by the bus driver to stand up so that a white man could sit down, she simply refused. She was arrested and thrown in jail, but her actions gave hundreds, thousands, millions of people the courage to stand up or to sit down for what they believe. In that moment, Rosa Parks did not feel that 4 black women who boarded the bus first should have to stand so that one white man could sit down. But in that moment, could she have known that one woman who decided not to collapse under the pressure of an oppressive legal system could move history? 4 days after Parks' arrest, the 26-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. was elected leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association, or MIA. Under his leadership, the movement was kept alive in the year that followed. Supporters participated in carpool systems, walked or rode the bicycle, or even rode mules or stagecoaches. Many taxi drivers lowered their fare to 10 cents to rival bus prices. The following year, on December 20th, 1965, the boycott ended, 381 days after it began, and 37 days after the Supreme Court declared that segregation on buses was unconstitutional. The African American Civil Rights Movement has started its own chapter in American history, and Martin Luther King Jr. has become a symbolic figure to be adored by many and hated by others. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a soldier, but he was often in the front lines. He's been attacked with words, with stones, and even stabbed. He never held a gun, but he used words as a weapon. He used the methods of nonviolent protest he learned from Gandhi to achieve civil rights goals. So Martin Luther King Jr. was not a soldier, but perhaps the word hero applies to him all the same. On September 20th, 1958, at a book signing for his book Stride Toward Freedom, King was attacked by a well-dressed woman who said she had been looking for him for 5 years. The letter opener she stabbed into his chest came harrowingly close to puncturing his aorta and required 3 hours of surgery to safely remove. The perpetrator, Izola Curry, was deemed unfit to stand trial and was admitted into a mental hospital. While still in the hospital, King issued a statement saying that he knows that thoughtful people will do all in their power to see that she gets the help she apparently needs if she is to become a free and constructive member of society, a comment that reflects his sympathy for the mentally ill. As a pastor, he knew full well the lessons of kindness and humility, but as a follower of Gandhi's philosophy, King also understood that those same qualities can be a force for social change. Another type of peaceful protest are sit-ins started by college students. In this type of protest, they simply went to a restaurant, sat at a white-only counter, and didn't leave. Dr. King and 300 students hosted a sit-in in Atlanta, Georgia in 1960. The 300 students were arrested and soon released, but Dr. King sat in jail until presidential candidate John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert Kennedy negotiated his release. Like Rosa Parks, the 4 college students who pioneered the sit-in movement took a stand by sitting down and refusing to leave, even when the restaurant manager told them they cannot sit at a white-only counter. Like Martin Luther King Jr., they believed in nonviolent protests. Sit-ins began to spread across the nation, across all forms of public spaces, such as libraries, pools, parks, museums, etc. One restaurant at a time, one park at a time, one pool at a time, victories of desegregation were won by those who sat down to stand up for what they believe.